Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, southeastern England, just close to the English Channel, otherwise known as the Haven. That's what we've renamed it because the Anglo-Saxon word for Hythe is the Haven, or Haven. All right, we'll get right down to it. Today, reading Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's poetic glorification of the Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. He said, in due course, Mahāpralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after the flood has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All right, we've reached the 14th chapter of Antya-līlā, Caitanya-caritämrta. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feelings of separation from Kṛṣṇa. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives the following summary of the 14th chapter. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feelings of separation from Kṛṣṇa resulted in highly elevated transcendental madness. When he was standing near the Garuda Stamba and praying to Lord Jagannath, a woman from Orissa put her foot on the Lord's shoulder in her great eagerness to see Lord Jagannath. Govinda chastised her for this, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu praised her eagerness. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the temple of Lord Jagannath, he was absorbed in ecstatic love and saw only Kṛṣṇa. As soon as he perceived this woman, however, his external consciousness immediately returned, and he saw Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also saw Kṛṣṇa in a dream. He was overwhelmed with ecstatic love. When he could no longer see Kṛṣṇa, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compared himself to a yogi and described how that yogi was seeing Vrindavan. Sometimes all the transcendental ecstatic symptoms were manifest in him. One night Govinda and Sarup Damodar noticed that although the three doors to the Lord's room were closed and locked, the Lord was not present inside. Seeing this, Sarup Damodar and the other devotees went outside and saw the Lord lying unconscious by the gate known as Singadwara. His body had become unusually long, and the joints of his bones were loose. The devotees gradually brought Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu back to his senses by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and then they took him back to his residence. Once, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mistook a sand dune known as Chataka Parvata for Govardhan Hill, As he ran toward it, he became stunned, and then the 8 ecstatic transformations appeared in his body due to great love for Kṛṣṇa. At that time, all the devotees chanted the Hare Krishna mantra to pacify him. Text 1. I shall now describe a very small portion of the activities performed by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu with his mind, intelligence, and body when he was bewildered by strong feelings of separation from Kṛṣṇa. Text 22. All glories to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All glories to Lord Gaurachandra, the life and soul of his devotees. All glories to Lord Nityananda, who is Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's very life, and all glories to Advaita Acharya, who is extremely dear to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Sarup Damodar and all the other devotees, headed by Srivas Thakur. Please give me the strength to describe the character of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's emotion of transcendental madness and separation from Kṛṣṇa is very deep and mysterious. One who is very advanced and learned cannot understand it. 6. How can one describe unfathomable subject matters? It is possible only if Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu gives him the capability. Sarup Damodar Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami recorded all these transcendental activities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in their notebooks. Purport. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental feelings of separation from Kṛṣṇa and his consequent madness are not at all understandable by a person on the material platform. Nonetheless, a so-called party of devotees named Nadia Nagari have sprung up and introduced the worship of Vishnu Priya. This certainly indicates their ignorance concerning Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. In the opinion of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, such worship is a product of the imagination. Many other methods of worshipping Caitanya Mahaprabhu have also been introduced, but they have all been rejected by stalwart devotees like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The groups practicing such unauthorized worship have been listed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur: Aula, Baula, Kartabhaja, Nedha, Daravesha, Shani, Sahajya, Sakhibeki, Smarta, Jatagoshai, Ativadi, Chudadari, Gauranga Nagari. Sarup Damodar Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami witnessed Caitanya Mahaprabhu's activities firsthand and recorded them in 2 notebooks. Therefore, without reference to these notebooks, one cannot understand the activities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone inventing some new method for worshipping Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is certainly unable to understand the Lord's pastimes, for he is bereft of the real process of approaching the Lord. Text 8. In those days, Sarup Damodar and Raghunath Das Goswami lived with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, whereas all other commentators lived far away from him. Purport. Besides Sarup Damodar and Raghunath Das Goswami, there were many others who also recorded Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur believes that the people of the world would benefit greatly if such notes were available. It is a most unfortunate situation for human society that none of these notebooks is still extant. Text 9. These two great personalities, Swarup Damodar and Raghunath Das Goswami, recorded the activities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu moment by moment. They described these activities briefly as well as elaborately in their notebooks. Purport. For future reference, we should remember that Swarup Damodar Goswami recorded the pastimes briefly, whereas Raghunath Das Goswami recorded them elaborately. These two great personalities simply recorded the facts. They did not create any descriptive literary embellishments. Text 10. Swarup Damodar wrote short notes, whereas Raghunath Das Goswami wrote elaborate descriptions. I shall now describe Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's activities more elaborately, as if fluffing out compressed cotton. Purport. Panjitika means further explanation of a subject. Writing such explanations is likened to the process of fluffing out cotton. Text 11. Please hear faithfully this description of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstatic emotions. Thus you will come to know of his ecstatic love, and ultimately you will achieve love of Godhead. Text 12. When Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu felt separation from Kṛṣṇa, his condition exactly corresponded to that of the gopis in Vrindavan after Krishna's departure for Mathura. The lamentation of Srimati Radharani when Uddhava visited Vrindavan gradually became a feature of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental madness. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's emotions exactly corresponded to those of Srimati Radharani when she met Uddhava. The Lord always conceived of himself in her position and sometimes thought that he was Srimati Radharani herself. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that the purport of the word abhiman, or self-conception, is that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu thought himself to be in the position of Srimati Radharani and was always ready to render Kṛṣṇa service in that way. Although Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is Kṛṣṇa himself, he assumed the complexion and emotions of Srimati Radharani and remained in that status. He never assumed the complexion or status of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Of course, Kṛṣṇa wanted to experience the role of Srimati Radharani. That is the original cause of his assuming the body of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, pure Vaishnavas never disturb Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's conception of being Srimati Radharani. Unfortunately, at the present time, a group of so-called devotees maintain that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the enjoyer and that they are enjoyers as well. They have actually deviated from devotional service to the Lord. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu manifested himself to show that cultivation of love for Kṛṣṇa in separation is the easiest way of success for all living entities. Despite this fact, there are many theosophists who declare that because Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such cultivation is easy for him but difficult for the living entity, and that one can therefore approach Kṛṣṇa in any way one likes. To nullify this idea, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated practically how one can achieve love of Kṛṣṇa by adopting Srimati Radharani's mood in separation from Kṛṣṇa. Text 15. Such is the state of transcendental madness. Why is it difficult to understand? When one is highly elevated in love of Kṛṣṇa, he becomes transcendentally mad and talks like a madman. 16. When the ecstatic emotion of enchantment gradually progresses, it becomes similar to bewilderment. When one reaches the stage of astonishment, Vaichitri, which awakens transcendental madness, Udgurna, then one reaches the stage, I'll read the whole thing again. Sorry, I made a mistake. When the ecstatic emotion of enchantment gradually progresses, it becomes similar to bewilderment. Then one reaches the stage of astonishment, Vaichitri, which awakens transcendental madness. Udgurna and Chitrajalpa are two among the many divisions of transcendental madness. Purport. This is a quotation from the Ujjvala Nilamani, Sthayi-bhava Prakarana, 174. 17. One day, while he was resting, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu dreamed he saw Kṛṣṇa performing his rasa dance. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu saw Lord Kṛṣṇa standing with his beautiful body curved in 3 places, holding his flute to his lips. Wearing yellow garments and garlands of forest flowers, he was enchanting even to Cupid. The gopis were dancing in a circle, and in the middle of that circle, Kṛṣṇa, the son of Maharaj Nanda, danced with Radharani. Seeing this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was overwhelmed by the transcendental mellow of the rasa dance, and he thought, now I am with Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan. Govinda, seeing that the Lord had not yet risen, awakened him. The Lord was somewhat unhappy when he understood that he had only been dreaming. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu performed his customary daily duties, and at the usual time he went to see Lord Jagannath in the temple. As he viewed Lord Jagannath from behind the Garuda's column, hundreds and thousands of people in front of him were seeing the deity. Suddenly, a woman from Orissa, unable to see Lord Jagannath because of the crowd, climbed the column of Garuda, placing her foot on Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's shoulder. When he saw this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant, Govinda, hastily got her down from her position. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, however, chastised him for this. This should be purport. Because Garuda is the carrier of Lord Vishnu, he is the supreme Vaishnava. Therefore, to touch his body with one's feet or to climb the column of Garuda is certainly a Vaishnava aparad, an offense to a Vaishnava. The woman was also offensive to Kṛṣṇa by putting her foot on the shoulder of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Seeing all these offenses, Govinda very hastily made her get down. 26. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said to Govinda, O Adivasya, uncivilized man, do not forbid this woman to climb the Garuda Stamba. Let her see Lord Jagannath to her satisfaction. Purport. For another explanation of the word Adivasya, refer to Antya-līlā, chapter 10, verse 116. When the woman came to her senses, however, she quickly climbed back down to the ground, and seeing Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, immediately begged at his lotus feet for forgiveness. Seeing the woman's eagerness, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, Lord Jagannath has not bestowed so much eagerness upon me. Purport. The woman was so eager to see Lord Jagannath that she forgot she was offending the feet of a Vaishnava by climbing the column of Garuda. She also neglected to consider that by putting her foot on the shoulder of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, she offended the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are both grievous offenses that displease the Supreme Lord and Vaishnavas. She was so eager to see Lord Jagannath, however, that she committed all these offenses obliviously. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu praised her eagerness. He regretted that Lord Jagannath had not bestowed such great eagerness upon him. Text 29. She has fully absorbed her body, mind, and life in Lord Jagannath. Therefore, she was unaware that she was putting her foot on my shoulder. Alas, how fortunate this woman is! I pray at her feet that she favor me with her great eagerness to see Lord Jagannath. Just previously, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had been seeing Lord Jagannath as Kṛṣṇa, the son of Maharaj Nanda, in person. Becoming fully absorbed in that vision, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had assumed the mood of the gopis, so much so that everywhere he looked, he saw Kṛṣṇa standing with his flute to his lips. After seeing the woman, the Lord's external consciousness returned, and he saw the original deity forms of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Lord Balaram. When he saw the deities, Lord Chaitanya thought he was seeing Kṛṣṇa at Kurukshetra. He wondered, have I come to Kurukshetra? Where is Vrindavan? Lord Chaitanya grew very much agitated, like a person who has just lost a recently acquired jewel. Then he became very morose and returned home. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu sat down on the ground and began to mark it with his fingernails. He was blinded by tears which flowed from his eyes like the Ganges. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, I found Kṛṣṇa, the Lord of Vrindavan, but I have lost him again. Who has taken my Kṛṣṇa? Where have I come? Purport. These are the feelings of Srimati Radharani. First, Lord Chaitanya felt that he had been taken to Vrindavan, where he saw Krishna's rasa dance with the gopis. Then he was brought to Kurukshetra to see Lord Jagannath, his sister Subhadra, and Lord Balarama. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu lost Vrindavan and Kṛṣṇa, the master of Vrindavan. At this time, Caitanya Mahaprabhu experienced Divyonmada, transcendental madness in separation from Kṛṣṇa. At Kurukshetra, Kṛṣṇa displays his opulence, whereas in Vrindavan, he is in his original position. Kṛṣṇa never goes even a step away from Vrindavan. Therefore, Kurukshetra is less important for the gopis than Vrindavan. Although devotees who worship Kṛṣṇa in opulence, his Vaikuntha aspect, may prefer to see Lord Kṛṣṇa at Kurukshetra along with Subhadra and Balaram, the gopis want to see Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan, performing the rasa dance with Srimati Radharani. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu showed by practical example how one can cultivate the mood of Radharani and the other gopis in separation from Kṛṣṇa. Devotees absorbed in this mood do not like to see Kṛṣṇa anywhere else but Vrindavan. Therefore, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu lamented, I found Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan, and now I have again lost him and come to Kurukshetra. Unless one is a very highly advanced devotee, he cannot understand these intricate feelings. The author of Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, however, has tried to explain this divyonmada as far as possible, and it is our duty simply to appreciate it as far as possible. Therefore, the author has made the following request in verse 11. Tate vishvashakari shunabhavrera bardhana haibe bhavera jnana paiba premadana. My dear readers, simply try to hear this description with faith and love. This will help you to understand transcendental ecstasy, and at last you will achieve love of Godhead very easily. Text 38. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dreamed of the rasa dance, he was fully absorbed in transcendental bliss. But when his dream broke, he thought he had lost a precious jewel. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would chant and dance, always absorbed in the bliss of transcendental madness. He carried out the necessities of the body, such as eating and bathing, merely out of habit. 40. At night, Lord Chaitanya would reveal to Sarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy the ecstatic feelings of his mind. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "At first, my mind somehow achieved the treasure of Kṛṣṇa, but it again lost him. Therefore it gave up my body and home because of lamentation and accepted the religious principles of a Kapalika yogi. Then my mind went to Vrindavan with its disciples, my senses." Purport. This verse is clearly metaphorical. 42. Having lost his acquired gem, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became overwhelmed with lamentation by remembering its attributes. Then, grasping the necks of Ramananda Roy and Sarup Damodar Goswami, he cried, "Alas, where is my Lord Hari? Where is Hari?" Finally, he became restless and lost all patience. "My dear friends," he said, "please hear of Krishna's sweetness. Because of a great desire for that sweetness, my mind has given up all social and Vedic religious principles and taken to the profession of begging, exactly like a mystic yogi." The ring of Krishna's Rasa-līlā, manufactured by Shukadev Goswami, the most auspicious craftsman, is as pure as an earring made from a conch shell. The yogi of my mind is wearing that earring upon his ear. From a gourd he has carved out the bowl of my aspirations, and he has taken the bag of my expectations on his shoulder. 45. The yogi of my mind wears the torn quilt of anxiety on his dirty body, which is covered with dust and ashes. His only words are, "Alas, Kṛṣṇa." He wears 12 bangles of distress on his wrist and a turban of greed on his head. Because he has not eaten anything, he is very thin. The great yogi of my mind always studies the poetry and discussions of Lord Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. In Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, great saintly yogis like Vyasadeva and Shukadev Goswami have described Lord Kṛṣṇa as the Supersoul beyond all material contamination. The mystic yogi of my mind has assumed the name Mahāprabhu and made disciples of my 10 senses. Thus my mind has gone to Vrindavan, leaving aside the home of my body and the great treasure of material enjoyment. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compares his mind to one of the mystic yogis known as Baulas, who make at least 10 disciples. 48. In Vrindavan he goes from door to door, begging alms with all his disciples. He begs from both the moving and the inert inhabitants, the citizens, the trees and the creepers. In this way he lives on fruits, roots and leaves. The gopis of Brajabhumi always taste the nectar of Krishna's attributes, his beauty, his sweetness, his aroma, the sound of his flute, and the touch of his body. My mind's 5 disciples, the senses of perception, gather remnants of that nectar from the gopis and bring them to the yogi of my mind. The senses maintain their lives by eating those remnants. There is a solitary garden where Krishna enjoys his pastimes, and in one corner of a pavilion in that garden, the yogi of my mind, along with his disciples, practice mystic yoga. Wanting to see Krishna directly, this yogi remains awake throughout the night, meditating on Krishna, who is the Supersoul, uncontaminated by the 3 modes of nature. When my mind lost the association of Krishna and could no longer see him, my mind became depressed and took up mystic yoga. In the void of separation from Krishna, he experienced 10 transcendental transformations. Agitated by these transformations, my mind fled, leaving my body, his place of residence empty. Thus, I am completely in trance. Purport. In this verse, the outward activities of the Kapalika mendicants have been described, but not their actual life. The Kapalika mendicants are tantric materialists who carry skulls in their hands. They are not Vaishnavas and have nothing to do with spiritual life. Therefore, they are untouchable. Only an outward comparison has been made between the mind and their activities, but their behavior should never be imitated. 52. When the gopis felt separation from Krishna, they experienced 10 kinds of bodily transformations. These same symptoms appeared in the body of Sri Caitanya, Mahāprabhu. The 10 bodily transformations resulting from separation from Krishna are anxiety, wakefulness, mental agitation, thinness, uncleanliness, talking like a madman, disease, madness, illusion, and death. Purport. This verse is a part of a description of Srimati Radharani's different traits from Ujjvala Nilamani, Vipralamba Prakarana, 153, by Srila Rupa Goswami. In this book, he elaborately explains the 10 symptoms as follows. Chinta, anxiety, as stated in the Hanksha Dutta 2. At Akrura's request, Krishna and Balaram left the house of Nanda Maharaj for Mathura. At that time, the mind of Srimati Radharani was disrupted, and she became almost mad because of extreme separation from Krishna. She experienced great mental pain and agitation, which caused her to drown in mental speculation in the river of anxiety. She thought, now I am going to die, and when I die, Krishna will surely come back to see me again. But when he hears of my death from the people of Vrindavan, he will certainly be very unhappy. Therefore, I shall not die. This is the explanation of the word chinta. Jagara, wakefulness, as stated in the Padyavali 326. Yat pashanti priyam swapne danyastang sakyoshitaha asmakam tu gate Kṛṣṇe gata nirud nidrapi vairani. Thinking herself very unfortunate, Srimati Radharani addressed her very dear friend, Vishakha. My dear friend, if I could see Kṛṣṇa in my dreams, I would certainly be glorified for my great fortune. But what can I do? Sleep also plays mischievously with me. Indeed, it has become my enemy. Therefore, I have not slept since the departure of Kṛṣṇa. Udvega, mental agitation. This word is explained in the Hamsa Dutta 104 as follows. Srimati Radharani addressed Lalita. My dear beautiful-faced Lalita, I cannot express how my heart is burning. It is a great, unfathomable ocean of anxiety. Still, I wish to offer my obeisances at your lotus feet. What shall I do? Please consider my condition and advise me how I can become peaceful. That is my desire. Tanava, thinness, is described as follows. When Uddhava returned to Mathura after visiting Vrindavan, Lord Kṛṣṇa inquired from him about Radharani and Vishakha. Uddhava replied as follows. Consider the condition of the gopis. Srimati Radharani especially is in a very painful condition because of separation from you. She has grown skinny and her bodily luster is almost gone. Her heart is immersed in pain, and because she has given up eating, her breasts have become black as if diseased. Because of separation from you, all the gopis, especially Radharani, appear like dried up water holes under the scorching heat of the sun. Malina Angata, uncleanliness, is described as follows. Uddhava said to Kṛṣṇa, O auspicious Kṛṣṇa, please hear me. The tribulation caused by your absence has made Vishakha languid. Her lips tremble like trees in a strong wind. Her beautiful face is like a lotus flower that is withered under the snow, and her eyes are like lotus petals scorched by the heat of the autumn sun. Pralapa, mad talking, is explained in the Lalita Madhava as follows. This is Srimati Radharani's lamentation for her beloved Kṛṣṇa, who was away from home. A woman whose husband has left home and gone to a foreign land is called Proshita Bhartrika. Lamenting for Kṛṣṇa in the same way that such a woman laments for her husband, Srimati Radharani said, My dear friend, when is the glory of Maharaj Nanda's family, Kṛṣṇa, who wears a half-moon ornament on his head? Where is Kṛṣṇa, whose hue is like that of the Indranila jewel, and who plays so nicely on his flute? Where is your friend, the best of all men, who's so expert in dancing in the dancing in the circle of the rasa dance? Where is he who is the real medicine to save me from dying of heart disease? I must condemn Providence, for he has caused me so many tribulations by separating me from Kṛṣṇa. Vyadi, disease, is also described in the Lalita Madhava. Being greatly afflicted by the pain of separation from Kṛṣṇa, Srimati Radharani said, "My dear Lalita, kindly hear me. I cannot bear suffering the fever of separation from Kṛṣṇa, nor can I explain it to you. It is something like gold melting in an earthen box. This fever produces more distress than poison, and it is more piercing than a thunderbolt. I suffer exactly like someone almost dead from cholera. To be giving me so much pain, this fever must be very strong indeed." Unmada, madness, is explained as follows. Uddhava said to Kṛṣṇa, "My dear Kṛṣṇa, all the gopis are so afflicted by your absence that they have become almost mad. O Murari, at home Srimati Radharani laughs unnecessarily and like a madwoman inquires about you from every living entity without distinction, even from the stones. She rolls on the ground, unable to bear the agony of your absence." Moha, illusion, is explained as follows. Lalita wrote Kṛṣṇa the following letter on Srimati Radharani's behalf. "My dear Kṛṣṇa, Srimati Radharani has fallen unconscious on the ground, her mind greatly agitated by her separation from you. O enemy of Kamsa, you have now become a first-class politician, and therefore you can supposedly give relief to everyone. Therefore, please consider the plight of Srimati Radharani, or very soon you will hear of her death. Maybe at that time you will lament, although now you are jubilant." Mrityu, death, is explained in the Hamsadutta 96. In the following letter, Lalita chastised Kṛṣṇa for staying in Mathura. Simply by dancing in the circle of the rasa dance, you attracted Srimati Radharani's love. Why are you now so indifferent to my dear friend Radharani? She is lying nearly unconscious, thinking of your pastimes. I shall determine whether she is alive by putting a cotton swab under her nostrils, and if she is still living, I shall chastise her. So we're going to stop there. I thought we could finish this chapter, but I didn't realize how many long purports there were. We've reached text 55, or 54 rather, and it has 129 verses, so we'll stop here and continue Caitanya Mahaprabhu's description of his ecstatic position tomorrow night. It's 8 o'clock. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Pure love of Kṛṣṇa ki jai. So, reflections, comments, discussion.
There's some greetings. You can read those.
Okay. I didn't expect to have so many reflections on this, because this is very, very deep. I'll speak just a few minutes on this after the greetings.
Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Uh-huh.
She says, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, and all devotee friends. All glories to Srila Prabhupada in the daily readings of Caitanya-caritämrta.
Hare Krishna.
From Bhakta-ben, he says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks for today's reading. Hearing about such ecstatic symptoms is very deep. It makes me seriously want to get more serious about spiritual life.
Yes, this is the proper attitude. First of all, unless one is completely free from the illusory energy of material nature, one cannot properly and truly understand what's going on. It's very difficult to understand. So therefore, in the beginning, or in one of the purports, we heard Srila Prabhupada commenting that we should simply hear these things and try to appreciate what's going on. Try to understand, but try to just appreciate what's going on and understand that when these devotees, when Chaitanya Mahāprabhu is experiencing these symptoms which appear like a person suffering greatly, or when we hear the descriptions of these 10 ecstatic symptoms from examples of the Brajabasis' relationships with Kṛṣṇa, and how especially Srimati Radharani and her closest friends Vishaka and Lalita feel in separation and even appear in separation, we will think naturally when we're in material consciousness that they are suffering, and therefore our minds may think, why would I want to go there and suffer like this to the point of almost death? But this is because we cannot see with our material eyes and hear with our material ears and experience with our material senses the ecstasies that they're feeling. They are actually feeling the topmost transcendental pleasure in separation from Kṛṣṇa. And therefore the service in separation from Kṛṣṇa is described by our acharyas in our line to be the most intense manifestation of love for Kṛṣṇa, even more than the meeting, even more than the union. Because it increases in anticipation and in feelings of separation. So Sanatana Goswami uses the example, and I've mentioned this a few times when I've read passages similar to these, that when you make ice cold enough, very cold, dry ice, then when you put it on your skin, it feels hot. And when you take it off, there's a burn, just like you put something hot on your skin. But the actual fact is that it's cold, it's not hot. So this is an inconceivable analogy, but it explains exactly what's going on. That when you hear Srimati Radharani and the gopis and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in their moods, lamenting like they're suffering greatly, they're actually experiencing the topmost emotions. Therefore, sometimes when the devotees would awaken Lord Chaitanya from these ecstatic feelings, he would lament, "Why have you woken me up? I was with Kṛṣṇa." He was saying all these things while he was dreaming and in the mood of separation from Kṛṣṇa, but he was experiencing the topmost transcendental ecstasy. Therefore he was complaining about them waking him up. Hare Krishna. Therefore, we are greatly fortunate to be able to hear these things translated and explained by a personality of the level of competence and spiritual perfection as Srila Prabhupada and the great souls he is translating. Hare Krishna.
Bhakta Ben also asks, how do you recommend becoming more serious and developing a sense of urgency.
First become clean, regulated, and extremely neat. All the things that we have been given are belonging to Kṛṣṇa, including our bodies and our minds. So we first have to elevate those things to the mode of goodness. And we can do that, as Krishna says in the Gita, Tasmat tvam inriyanyado niyamya bharatarshava. Niyamya means the regulations. Papmanam prajihiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. So jnana vijnana nashanam means the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. And how to do that? Tasmat tvam inriyanyano. From the very beginning, regulate the senses. Niyamya bharatarshama. Papmanam prajihiyenam. This will extinguish the sinful activities of our lives. If we absorb ourselves in the activities of Krishna consciousness and the regulations of the instructions of the liberated souls, then gradually we will become more and more serious. The first symptoms of seriousness are the attention to the details in our devotional life. And the first comes regulation of the senses and cleanliness to the extreme. This is the springboard to Shuddha Sattva. From goodness, you can see something, you can feel something, and that's the springboard to come to Vishuddha Sattva. And when you hear with that consciousness, that's where the hearing with faith and love comes. We hear with faith and love when our hearts are pure, when our minds are pure. And we can't be pure until we become free from the modes of passion and ignorance, which are lower and dirty, actually. As long as we're in passion and ignorance, we cannot actually hear these things with love and faith. We'll think of them to be exaggerations, or we'll think of them as being horrible because they sound horrible. And our minds in that way capture us and keep us in the material world. So first things first, not that we shouldn't hear these things. Srila Prabhupada translated this Caitanya-caritämrta all the way through with all the commentaries and commented on all these things. Halfway through his translation of the Bhagavatam, at the 5th canto, he hadn't published the 5th canto. The 5th canto was done, but not published. And then he did the whole Caitanya-caritämrta. Took him 1.5 years only. Anybody who's worked in publications, in translating or editing or pre-production and printing of transcendental literature knows that to do this work in 1.5 years from scratch is some kind of miracle. So this is an empowered soul. So we're able to associate with an empowered soul and to be able to fully appreciate and fully hear what's going on and understand and taste the real thing. We first have to become purified by the regulated principles of devotional service. And then by the gradual process of hearing again and again and again and again, we will gradually get it. And if you can, as soon as you can hear with real faith, pure faith, complete faith and devotion, immediately you get the realization and love of God. Hare Krishna. And you may say, but I'm so far from that. How can I even understand it? What to speak of, explain it, or describe it to someone else? That is the mercy of the disciplic succession. That is the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He came to give this, and he can give it to anyone, but one has to take it and take the process seriously. Then anyone can get it from any position in life. It doesn't depend on level of education. It doesn't depend on the social status of your birth. It doesn't depend on anything else except good fortune and the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. Once Prabhupada told us, I have given you this faith. He said, this is what preaching is to give that faith. But we can only give what we have. So first things first, explain to people how to live in the mode of goodness. And live in the mode of goodness ourselves. And we get there by dedicating our life and our senses to the spreading of the Sankirtan movement. That's why if you study Lord Chaitanya's life in the whole, then we'll see that first he educated himself and then he preached. Of course, he was always in the mood of Radharani throughout. Rupa Goswami wrote the Hamsadutta before he met Lord Chaitanya. Some of these very high transcendental realities, he wrote that before he met Lord Chaitanya. So he was an eternal devotee who just externally looked like he was fooling around with the Muslims and doing, management for them. But he was actually an eternally liberated soul. That's why when Lord Chaitanya met Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, he said, you are my old eternal servants. But still, Rupa Goswami said, everybody says that I'm advanced, everybody says that I'm great, everybody says these things, but I don't even know who I am. Who am I? And what did Lord Chaitanya say? You are a servant of Kṛṣṇa. He didn't say, you're Rupa Manjari and Vilas Manjari or somebody else. And in that way, they teach us how to approach. They teach us how to be, how to live, and how to think, feel, and will carefully so that we can enter into these transcendental understandings and taste them. And it's a gradual process for everyone. It's different. It's not a stereotyped, process. It's different for everyone. How you react according to your, mood. That's as far as I can go at the moment. Hare Krishna.
Bhaktiben says, thanks for your answer, Maharaj.
My pleasure.
And there's something from Rati Manjari.
Haribol Rati.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. After such an exalted reading, I feel hesitant about asking my little question, which I was wondering about at the beginning of the reading. Like a fool, I will go ahead anyway, hoping not to disturb the mood of the reading. In the purport to text 7, we heard that some so-called party of devotees called Nadia Nagari has sprung up and introduced the worship of Vishnu Priya. Srila Prabhupada states that this indicates their ignorance concerning Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. It would seem to me that Srimati Vishnu Priya, being the consort of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, is also worshipable. I do, however, accept the instruction of the acharyas and am trying to mold my life accordingly. For the sake of sharing proper understanding, I do want to understand the details on this. Could you please explain what exactly is the offense of worshipping Vishnu Priya in the way these pseudo-devotees do?
They worship Vishnu Priya without Lord Chaitanya. They put her in the center rather than Kṛṣṇa, rather than Caitanya Mahaprabhu in the center. And then they make the gross offense of putting Caitanya Mahaprabhu in the center of the gopis as the enjoyer of the gopis. This is an offense. Why? Because Lord Chaitanya came to taste the mood of Srimati Radharani and the gopis. It's a disturbance to his devotional service to put him in the center of the gopis as the enjoyer of the gopis. He is in the mood of Srimati Radharani. This is a great offense. It's a disturbance to Lord Chaitanya. And it misleads everyone. Lord Chaitanya's Radharani, worshipping Kṛṣṇa, and they're worshipping Vishnu Priya. Therefore, they're a disturbance. It's a disturbance to the actual worship of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna.
Says I understand it better now. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll stop tonight. It's 20 minutes after 8. Thank you, dear devotees, for your reflections and your comments and your questions. I am a highly unqualified person. I'm the lowest of the low, and I don't have the adhikar to describe these things. I just tried to repeat what I've heard from Srila Prabhupada and from those who understand better than I. So may I always remain a peon, deliverer of the mail. Hare Krishna. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Samabeda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow night. And we're going to finish this chapter tomorrow night for sure. And it's going to be very wonderful. See you then. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol.